So when I'm working on taking steering systems apart, I like to keep the most solid mounts connected till last, because it really gets difficult if you got that thing flopping around on you. So places like the idler arm over there that's connected directly to the frame, I want to save till last, and that is connected to the drag link. And then the next connection over, that there is a tie rod end. I can disconnect that one and I still have a pretty solid connection of the drag link to the frame. So those are going to be the next things I go after. So there's two of them, one for each side. I'll probably only show you one unless I run into difficulty and have some technique to show you. But I am going to take the cotter pin off of that and loosen the nut, and this is a good point here. I always make sure that I loosen the nut before I break that bond between the taper of that shaft and whatever it's connected to, in this case the drag link. Because if you have a rusted on nut and you break that bond between the drag link and the tapered shaft that the nut is on, then that's a ball joint. It's meant to spin, and you'll never get that thing off without using a nut cracker. So always take the nut off. Even if you want to put it back on to beat on it with a hammer or something, take it all the way off first. Make sure it's pretty free, because once you break that bond, as you could see on that power steering ram, it'll spin and you'll have a heck of a time getting it off. So I took the two cotter pins out of the tie rod ends, and that one I've got a puller on it. I was just testing to see if it would fit, but on both the tie rods there and there, I took the cotter pins out. And I was working on taking the cotter pin out of that nut right there. It's on top of that control unit. It's really hard to get to. The cotter pin is all bent over and it's at a bad angle to get to, and my wife called, so I was chatting with her a bit and just standing back and not really thinking about it, but I was like, I got hit with a brainstorm. Basically, is if I take the two tie rods off, and then I can take off the steering gear over here with like 3 bolts, and I can take, probably not going to be able to get a good picture of it here, but the idler arm is over there. If I take the 2 bolts that hold that on, the idler arm, to the frame, if I take those off, then that whole drag link with the steering gear and that control unit that I'm struggling to get to the cotter pin, and I would struggle to get to the nut, and I would struggle to get to get that broke loose from that stud there. I can take it over and stick it in the vise and stand up and work on it very easily. Now, there is one thing I want to point out here. A lot of people see this and think they've got a problem with that control unit, but they really don't. I'm going to turn the steering gear a bit, and as I turn it, you'll be able to see that there appears to be play in this stud right here. I think I've got my finger on it. But it's the one that connects the control unit to the fitment arm. And it looks like it has play in it. And it does. But that is totally normal until you get pressure from the power steering system in it, and then it tightens up. So a lot of people think that's a problem with their car, and it really isn't. This steering on this car was perfect before I took it apart because the radiator needed replaced. So there was no issue with it whatsoever. So that's worth knowing, because if you go and replace that, you're going to put the new one in, you're going to find it still has play because there's no fluid in it and it's not under pressure. So what I am going to do next is take those two tie rod ends off. And I'm going to use the puller tool that I have to take them off, just to show you how it works. As I've said, there's a lot of ways you can attempt to take these things off. There's a lot of tools you can use, and if you get a decent tool, and mine's made in Taiwan or something, but it'll pop them right out. So first thing is take the nut off all the way before you break that bond between the drag link and the tie rod end. And you take this tool and slip it over and around the fat part of the drag link. Tighten it down on the top of the head of the bolt, and I've used the bolt here to just keep it from slipping off. And you want to be tightening this now. And maybe I should have brought a wrench that would give me a little more leverage, but we'll see. That is the one thing about these, they do tend to try to slip off. Let's straighten that out. That's why you don't really want to use an impact wrench or something to do that, because they are going to try to slip. So I'm putting it on already shifted to the right like it wanted to go. When it pops, this is going to try to knock me over. And sometimes, and I don't have it with me, but sometimes it's a good idea to take and wrap on that the knuckle and the drag link with a hammer. It can help free it up sometimes. give it a couple little taps and see if anything happens. Doesn't look like there's much room to get the hammer in there. Maybe if I do it from the bottom. There you go. Gentle tap and it's off. So one tie rod end is off. I'll do the other. I think I've shown all of the techniques for getting these things off that I have in my repertoire. So I think the next thing will be, after I get that other tie rod end off, I'll take the steering box off, the idler arm, and then that whole thing will be able to be taken over to the vise. So now what I've got left is 3 9/16 bolts, and they're carriage head bolts going through the frame, so the only thing you need to do to make sure they don't turn is make sure that they don't push out of the frame. And then 2 9/16 bolts. Again, one is a carriage bolt over on the idler arm, and that whole drag link and steering locks will come out. And I might need to use a swivel on those. So I was holding my hand around the back to prevent that one will come out with a short extension. The other one, the motor mounts in the way a little bit, and we'll have to work around that one. There's bolts. The third one, probably can do with just a bigger extension. Some of these bolts out of here. Or the nuts, I should say. I think that'll work. And I didn't hold it in on the back end, so it's spinning. To get that on the back end again so that I can take it off. Washer went under the ring. I have to fish that out. Make sure that I have the video where you can see what I'm doing. So there's the idler arm there. It's got two 9/16 nuts holding it on. On the one, I'm going to have to hold it with a wrench on the back side. That's the top one. Not sure why they designed it quite that way, but it is what it is. So, get that ground strap out of the way. I don't need this. Well, maybe I can't use the extension. We're going to start with the top one. Bottom one. Trying to get that nut. That nut's in the way. We'll take the second one out of here too, since it's here. Okay, again, this one is a carriage bolt on the back end. So I have to hold it in. Okay, I'll go back off the angle of the camera, and you should be able to see me lift the entire thing off. Be able to take it over to the workbench. So, that's the idler arm off. Steering box, that's kind of heavy. And I will just put this aside for now, shut the camera off, walk around the other side, take it over to the bench. And that is going to be it for today. Next time I would imagine I will start to take apart the ball joints and all that stuff, because it's pretty much what's left on the front end.